Good afternoon and welcome to GenQA's final webinar of the year. In a change to our usual focus on format, today we have a unique presentation from Mark Scott. Mark is a father, a husband, history teacher and a patient living with myeloma. We're extremely grateful that Mark has provided us with this presentation today, in which he tells us of his experiences of life with this diagnosis. Thank you.
My name is Mark, and I'm now 3 years into my myeloma experience, which I'm just going to talk you briefly through for 15-20 minutes. And I'm going to take you back to 2018, January 2018, when we entered what sounds like a very dodgy midlife crisis. We called it at the time our threesome experience. Next slide, please. Because we had myself, my wife, and we had misdiagnosis. In January 2018, I was having a little bit of a midlife crisis and had started exercising quite a lot again and was struggling quite a lot with a lot of back pain, which I put initially down to just being a little bit overweight, I think. But it was just getting worse and worse. Next slide, please. And initially, if you tab that one more button, I was told I had facet joint wear and tear. So this is in January. I didn't know what facet joints were, if I'm completely honest. But it was linked to too much exercise, apparently, which didn't really sit true with me because, like many people, I sporadically would exercise and run and lift weights and things, but never consistently. But anyway, I took the diagnosis and started some physio sessions. As we progressed through the first half of 2018, I was developing increasing amounts of back pain. My hip was also causing me a lot of trouble. I collapsed a couple of times and ended up going to A&E, and x-rays and things weren't really showing anything. If you tab the next one for me, please, Jen. And basically we moved over a period of a few months from facet joint wear and tear to a slip disc, possibly a trapped nerve, something like that. And all the time I was in and out of A&E, I was in and out of my GPs. And if we go one more forward, I remember one of my GPs saying to me, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Backs are terrible. Always a pain to treat backs. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So if we tab forward, Jen, and go through the next few tabs. So during these first few months of 2018, I was seen by a whole range of people. Just one more for me, Jen. And some of those were through the NHS. Some of those were private because I'm quite a proactive person. So when things didn't seem to be working, I went to a private physio, I went to an osteopath as well. I tried acupuncture, tried any number of things. The only thing that seemed to be making a small difference, but not a great deal of difference, Jen, if you go forward, was an incredible amount of opioids. So from sort of January to May, I was very much Vincent Vega. I was taking a huge amount of painkillers and nothing was really working. We get to May the 19th, and I'm very specific about my dates with this. That was the day after the last history exam because I'm a history teacher. And I tried to get up to go to work. At the time, I was crawling from my bed to the bathroom and then levering myself up on the bath and the sink into a standing position and then making a kind of snap judgment on whether or not I could go into work that day. And I collapsed and was advised to have a complete week of bed rest. And hopefully this would settle the back down a little bit. Little did I know that May the 19th was the first day of that period, and that period of bed rest didn't end until the end of July. I did leave the house a couple of times for medical appointments as we tried to get to the bottom of things. I had an MRI. That was inconclusive, which was a real blow because I was hoping that would show us something clear and obvious. We organised some bloods. Unfortunately, I couldn't get from the car into the blood testing centre. I was on crutches at the time and the pain was almost indescribable. And they didn't manage to get enough blood. So the bloods came back as inconclusive as well. So really, by the time we got to the end of the school year, which is mid-July, I'd been off work for close to 10 weeks at that point. I was stuck in bed and we didn't really know what was going on. And to be honest, we were a little bit scared and a little bit worried, myself and my wife. And if we go forward a slide for me, please. However, what I do want to make clear is that this is very much to me a horses and zebras situation. And I bear no ill will to any medical professional who tried to sort me out during those sort of 7 months, because when you hear hooves, you think of horses, you don't think of zebras. So a reasonably young man, as I was 45 at the time, turning up and saying, I've got a sore back, I'm limping, they're going to diagnose a back issue. I'm not entirely sure of the figures exactly, but I think roughly 2% of myeloma diagnoses are in people 45 and under. I think I've read or heard that somewhere. So effectively, I was just a little bit unlucky. Can you go next slide, please, Jen? So we get to 30th of July, Monday the 30th of July. And my wife has finished work for the summer, my wife Emma, and she says, look, this is ridiculous, we've got to do something. So she goes down to our GP surgery and asks a GP to come up and visit me at home. One of our local GPs who'd seen me a couple of months before came to see me. I won't repeat what she said, but she said, you just need to get to hospital now. So on that Monday, I was in A&E, lay on a gurney, not really sure what was going on, waiting to be seen. They did a full range of bloods and everything else. And the day after, on the 31st, we had our first conversation about what potentially might be wrong. And I remember the doctor speaking about the overcalcification of my bones, my vertebrae had enlarged and were grinding together. That was the cause of the back pain. So initially, straight away, I thought, oh, well, that sounds okay. That sounds like something they can fix. And it was the day after, on Wednesday, the 1st of August, that I spoke to the Wigan haematology consultant, and I first heard the words myeloma. We can have the next slide, please, Jen. Now, obviously, that period of 7 months was absolutely awful. I can't describe to you just how bewildering it is when you just can't seem to get your hands on a clear diagnosis. And this also sounds slightly bizarre, but when they finally told me what it was, I was actually quite pleased, because at the end of the conversation, I got my cancer care pack. I read some information about myeloma. I wasn't going to die in the immediate short term. What I had was treatable. And now all of a sudden we could plan and we could organize what we were going to do moving forward. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So ironically, it sounds strange to say, but I was actually pleased to know what we were facing. So on the Friday, the 3rd, I was moved to Manchester Royal Infirmary. And part of the thing that had given me sort of hope was that I knew the haematology team, as I've been told at Wigan, were one of the best in Europe, and they were going to be amazing. So it was, how are we going to move forward and treat it? We're now on Friday, the 3rd of August, and it was the following day, if we go forward a slide, Jen, that I had my first in detail conversation with Alberto Rocci, who was my consultant. And obviously with any form of treatment like this, any form of heavy duty treatment, we went through all the potential side effects. I mean, to be fair, it sounds rude to say I was getting a little distracted on that day, because it was actually my 17th wedding anniversary. And I was trying to liaise with my brother to make sure my wife had a present for when she arrived at hospital. However, I did obviously take the clear message from Dr. Rocci that this wasn't going to be an easy journey at all. And as you can see, a huge range of side effects, many of which I did suffer with, thankfully, though I am still here. If we go forward, please. Now, I started a regime of Velcade, dexamethasone, and thalidomide. And to be honest, and when I do this talk with myeloma patients, this always gets a bit of a groan. I didn't suffer with any side effects particularly. Jen, if you could tab these on for me. I have a touch of neuropathy from the Velcade, which was initially masked by the opiates I was taking. I still have that now. That's still with me, but not too bad. The insomnia from the steroids, I didn't mind at all, to be completely honest. I binged watched many a series on my iPad. I got through Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Big Bang Theory, The American Office, amongst many others. But probably the biggest side effect was that I was just a bit grumpy about the whole experience. At this time, I was still obviously bedbound and wasn't able to get up out of bed. So absolutely everything had to be done for me. Now, as we get forward through my chemo, my 6 months of chemotherapy, my paraprotein levels upon admittance to hospital was 68. By January, we were down to about 5. So then we had to have the conversation about what to do next. Now, right from the start, Dr. Rothschild made it clear that a stem cell transfer was a possibility. If we go forward, Jem. So we had a few months off chemo, and then we started to think about having a SCT. Now, this sounds, again, a little strange to say, but this was the first time I really felt like a cancer patient, and I've got some pictures to explain why. I kind of had in my head, if we go forward, Jen, for a picture at a time, I always saw in my head as being in hospital with cancer, as having no hair, walking down the ward with my drip and my trolley. If we go forward, Jen, obviously extensive and long and weighty procedures. I mean, this was me having my my cells harvested, which is some kind of medical magic right there, how they did that. And then when I came into hospital for my stem cell and I was in isolation, next picture, please, we had the calm before the storm, so to speak. Having had my stem cells returned and my melphalan and then my stem cells returned on a Thursday at the end of March, for a couple of days, I kind of sat around my room in isolation wondering what the fuss was all about. But obviously then the side effects did kick in, and I have to say, it was horrible. The thing that I was worried about and did happen was the kind of ulcers in the throat, so I couldn't swallow, so I didn't eat for 10 days. So I suppose in one sense it was great because I did lose nearly a stone in weight, but I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, everything made me sick. A really awful experience, but the alternative to me was very unpalatable. If we go forward, Jen. Oh, sorry, and obviously then I lost my hair, which, as you can see from now, has grown back quite lusciously as it happens. Now, for me, this wasn't a conversation having a stem cell transfer. I know it's a incredibly arduous experience, but as far as I was concerned, if we go forward, Jen, if I don't have this, I'm going to die sooner. This is giving me, and is currently giving me, the deepest and longest remission that I'm going to have during my illness. So there's absolutely no way I wasn't going to do this. Even when they said there's a 2% chance that you're going to die during the procedure, I said that's immaterial. I'll take 98%, thank you. If we go forward, Jen, and I always turn to the words of Muhammad Ali when he said, "Don't quit, suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." The 2 weeks in hospital for stem cell transfer and then the subsequent recovery was awful, absolutely awful. But I am fully recovered now and in a high quality, excellent, non-detectable, no myeloma cells detectable remission. So it was a no-brainer for me. And it's sometimes a conversation I have to try and have with myeloma patients who are rightly fearful of the experience. If we go forward, Jen. Now I'm going to go back to the start of all of this on Wednesday the 1st, and how I sort of approached being ill. When the doctors left me and I lay in bed, again, couldn't move, couldn't get up, could barely sit up. I lay there, I have to be honest, I did have a bit of a minute. I was a little bit upset, I had a bit of a cry, and I thought, well, why has this happened to me? I'm 45, I'm reasonably healthy by any kind of measurable metrics. I don't smoke, I don't drink too much. I exercise reasonably regularly. So why on earth has this happened to me? But after a few minutes, I thought, well, hang on a minute, have a word with yourself. 1, they know what you've got. 2, you're not going to die in any immediate sense. And 3, this isn't just going to be my journey now. I've got to think about my wife, my children, my dog, my rabbits, whatever, my family, my brother, my mum and dad. I thought, you need to be positive about this. If you go forward, Jem. So from that moment on, from that Wednesday, we said, right, that's it. This is all about being positive about this. We are going to out positive this illness. It doesn't matter what they do to you. It doesn't matter about the treatment, the indignity of some of the hospital experiences, which I won't go into, especially if people are having their lunch, but we're going to be positive about this all the time. I'm going to move forward in a positive mindset. And that's still with me now. I genuinely believe that I will die with rather than of my myeloma. Next one for me, Jem. Another thing that was also a little frightening at the time was the experiences that other people were telling you about, the bone marrow biopsies, etc., all these kind of things, the stem cell. And I thought, you know what, this isn't anybody else's experience. This is my experience, and I will get through it in my own way. And last one, and there may be no medical basis for what I'm saying here, but to me, I think the treatment obviously is a huge part of me getting better. but the attitude has to go alongside it. I absolutely have to have a positive attitude. And I was very lucky that friends, family, colleagues, even the students in my school were relentlessly positive on my behalf as well. And the second thing that I decided we had to do if we go forward, Jen, was that from that day, Wednesday, the 1st of August, there was going to have to be a win every single day. I was laying in bed at night, thinking over what had happened that day, whether it was treatment, whether it was physio, whatever it was, you had to have a tiny marginal gain that day. So that might be as simple as sitting up, moving the top half of my bed up a little bit so I could eat my breakfast. It's not easy to eat Rice Krispies when you lay flat on your back, I can tell you. It was about making sure you won every day till the end of treatment. And that was absolutely my philosophy. If we go forward, Jen, and I've put together a collection of some of my, what seem like incredibly inconsequential wins. I apologize for this picture. I do look like an extra from The Revenant in this picture, but this is the first time I stood unaided. In fact, I'm not unaided because you can just see the physio holding me up. The first time I managed to get into my wheelchair and go for a coffee with Emma. The 2 times, I think in the 2 months I was hospitalized, they let my kids come in, Molly and William. They let them come in twice just for a couple of minutes, obviously with risk of infection on a haematology ward. Those visits were few and far between. And then finally, as we neared the end of my time in hospital, this is the first time I walked 100 steps. And when we talk about those marginal gains, those little wins every day, the physios used to go on at me about not counting my steps every day because I do physio every day. And it's like, right, we did 20 steps yesterday. Can we do 25 today? We did 25 yesterday. Can we get to 30? And they had to keep trying to rein me in because I was determined that I was going to, get better and better and get stronger every day. So if we go forward, I'm going to bring you now to July 2019. My hair is coming back slowly at this point. I'm now 100 days post stem cell transfer. And I'm sat with Dr. Rocci for my 100-day post-SCT appointment. And that's when he told me the magic words that the myeloma was undetectable. And touch wood, 27 months later, it remains the case. So it was then about recovering and getting back to a sense of normality. So if we go forward, Jen, now I'm a Star Wars guy, not a Star Trek guy at all. But however, I think this quote from Spock sums it up really. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Lots of things had to change at home. I wasn't physically strong enough to walk up and down the stairs. So if we go forward, Jen, they had to put a hospital bed in my dining room. You can see me there quite pleased with myself because I'm managing to stand up without holding my Zimmer frame. And listen, to say I'm painting this rosy picture of how I got through treatment as a relative breeze, that's not the case really. And if we go forward a little bit now, and just have these in for me, I do still suffer with a very sore back. I had 7 spinal fractures, 7 fractured vertebrae due to the period of time where I didn't get a diagnosis. And as a consequence of that, and this sounds incredibly vain to say, I lost 6 inches of height. And that's probably the thing that annoys me the most. I used to be 6'1", I'm now 5'7". But if they ever need a stunt double for Quasimodo, I'll be the guy for that, I reckon. I do get very tired. A full school day will probably be around 12 to 15,000 steps teaching and lots of other things. So by the end of the day, I'm limping a little bit. I'm very tired. Like I say, I do still suffer with a touch of neuropathy, but nothing too bad. I will very quickly lose feeling in my hands and feet if, for any reason, there's less blood flow. And usually most days I have a lie down when I get home, a little bit of a rest. And a side effect that I never knew or I don't quite understand to this day, and it's terrible at this time of year with all the Christmas adverts, is I get really emotional at absolutely bizarre things. If there's a puppy or a baby on an advert on the telly, I start filling up, which is completely at odds with my uber masculine persona, as you can imagine. But having said all of that, these things are relatively minor, aren't they? Because basically I'm still here. Now, moving forward, I have managed to return to school. I am hiding in an office and nobody can find me. Coming back to doing the job that I absolutely love. And this was always the end goal, to get back to work and get back to school. I'm not allowed to play in any of the school sports competitions, but you can see I can turn my hand at a game of table tennis. And I've come back to teaching history in school again, which has been fantastic. And again, the students when I was off were overwhelmingly positive and incredibly encouraging. If we go forward. Now, again, this may sound slightly bizarre to say, but I'm very much a big believer that you have to find your cancer perks. And I understand as a young person with myeloma, you know, the outcomes and the life expectancy may be different for people who are diagnosed later in life. But I still think regardless of your situation, you've got to try and find positives from your experience. Any experience in life, you can find a positive. So if we go forward, Jen, I certainly did find some. Firstly, and this isn't to say that my relationship with my wife and kids isn't brilliant anyway, but it's actually probably even better, and I'm more conscious of being present and not being consumed with work and things and making sure I'm there for my family. It's made me think about how I behave. I'm probably healthier than I've been in years and years and years. My bucket list has now changed to do it now list. So all the things I want to do, we're not going to wait till I'm in my 60s and do them later. We're going to do them as soon as possible. And I think certainly I got a little bit fed up, but it sounds strange to say, with people saying you're so brave. I just believe that the depths of strength that people can draw on is greater than we think. And finally, as I said, the outpouring of affection from colleagues, from friends. I think we all go through life a little bit with a little bit of imposter syndrome. Are we popular? Do people like us? Are we good at our job? And all these kind of self-doubts that we all hold. But something that really helped me get through my treatment was the fact that I had such an amazing network of people. Even school friends I hadn't seen for 20 years were getting in touch and saying, can I come and visit you? And that was overwhelming and a big part of being where I am today. And finally, something that I like to finish with when I talk to myeloma patients is just about my experience as a whole, Jen, on the next slide, is that you just have to accept that it's going to be a new normal, but it doesn't mean that it can't be a rewarding and fulfilling life as it was pre-diagnosis. And last slide, Jen, and I'll stop going on with myself. And I always finish with this. When I talk to people who have been newly diagnosed or people who are struggling, I always start with finish with a quote from Eisenhower. What counts is not necessarily the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And I think that's something that I think the myeloma community very much brings to the table in terms of fighting against this illness.
Jen Q would like to thank Mark Scott and Jen Christie of UK NEQAS for sharing this presentation today. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Thank you.